so I'm mentioning it
They don't send
again.
it back
You had to
saying,
do all that,
we're
right?
not gonna print it?
They sent it back saying it needs to either be
My
shorter
techie
or
person's
longer.
going back
And we
downstairs.
prefer it to be longer, so I made it longer.
All righty.
400 words plus, and I gave him 423.
Okay, this is the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners special budget meeting. Today is Friday, February 21st. It's 3 o'clock. If we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Said Friday, yeah.
This is Friday?
Not yet.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess I read the wrong budget meeting, so sorry about that.
It's the Wednesday budget.
Today
meeting.
is Wednesday, isn't it? So,
All day.
if we could do roll call, please.
Commissioner Lathrop,
I'm here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Wheelock, Thomas,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Rennie,
Here.
Lemko.
Here. Next, we'll have public hearing, or public comment. Is there anybody from the public wish to say anything? If not, we will go on to our presentation from Jamel.
All right, this will be short and sweet, I hope. I had notes on my PowerPoint, but we can't make them so they display, so I'm sorry, but I kind of have to wing it. It'll be fine, but, hey, how do I get it to the first slide? No? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't, it's some technical difficulties. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I'm on the first slide. And basically, we're talking about our funding and what we can do to maybe help with the situation that we're in or not. First of all, who are our customers? Who do we serve? Obviously, it's all the police, fire, law enforcement agencies in the county. A lot of supporting agencies, our citizens, visitors, travelers, and 18,000 and probably 900 maybe by now Facebook followers. There are a lot of supporting agencies, DPW, Animal Control, that we have regular contact with. So they are our customers also. For how many people we serve, our statistics for 2013 tells you how many 911 calls we received, how many non-emergency calls, and how many calls for service that we dispatched. It doesn't really quantify how many people we served because we do a lot of other things besides answer the phone and dispatch people. So there are a lot of other tasks that are performed in the dispatch center, a lot of other ways that we help people, but they're really not recorded in a way that I can give you statistics on that. And why are our services important? I think public safety has always been a priority for this board, and we're an essential part of public safety. We want to give the citizens and people in Grand Traverse County the fastest public safety response that we can, the most accurate. And we also want to manage those responders the best we can so that we're making the best use out of our resources. That's why we use our prioritized ambulance dispatching and some other factors. So we try to use things the most responsible way that we can and yet get people the help that they need. I'm kind of switching gears a little bit, and I know that a couple of you were at the presentation yesterday that we had, and we do need to talk about that a little bit. There are a lot of things in 911 that have changed. Not even necessarily changing right now. They've changed more in the past couple of years than they have in the 30 years prior to that. This is just a small example of what's different. You see on the left side, caller location fixed. When someone would call us from a landline, we knew where they were. There was no doubt, there was no question. It told us where they were. It told us who responded to that location. It was very clear cut. The telephone number equaled the location. It was very simple. We only received voice, and it was very predictable. Now, the caller location, it's mobile. We don't know where they are. The telephone number does not equal the location. Obviously, numbers are portable, so area codes and numbers have no connection to a location anymore. Multimedia, right now we get voice, but we can get it in different ways than just the hardline phone. We get cellular, we get voice over internet protocol, and there are a lot of other things that are out there that we have to consider. Those things include the text to 911, streaming video, pictures, security cameras. We touched on some of those things yesterday. And one of the things that one of our presenters said, which I thought was helpful in looking at that, if someone needs 911 and that method is there for them to call, most people in the public assume that they're going to be able to connect with 911. And for us, or I'll say me anyway, I do text, but it's not my primary means of communication. However, with a lot of our younger people, it is their primary means of communication. Even if they can call, even if someone calls them, they don't answer the phone, but they'll answer a text. The other consideration is the security that's available, the information that's available to come to dispatch centers. I'm not suggesting we have to embrace all this and do it all, but it's there and we have to think about it. If we have a bank alarm, we go to a lot of false bank alarms. Almost all of them are false, and I'm happy about that. Wouldn't it be nice if we could go into the security camera system of the bank and look and see what's going on there before we have to send everybody lights and siren, and they're still going to go, but we'd have a much better idea of what's happening. And what would be the benefits if we had an incident at the school and we could go into their security system and use those cameras to see what's going on. Those are all things that are available and being implemented in some places. We've got to think about what direction do we want to go. I mean, I have some mixed feelings about dispatchers getting pictures of traumatic accident victims and how that will impact the dispatch center, because it will. But the medical people, that information would be very helpful to them. So it's kind of got to figure out how that can be implemented to be the most benefit. Okay, so how do we do that? Well,
I think the most interesting part of that presentation was your system was designed when the Princess phone was introduced.
yes.
So that
it was.
tells you how antiquated our system is and where we have to go. So I think it's really important. You know, people call 911 and they get it through and there's not a problem. But it's not up to date where we need to be.
No, it isn't, and it as more things, as more technology becomes available, it gets harder for us. It just is not built to do that. And the other part of it is I feel a sense of responsibility to investigate and implement solutions to some of these problems. I don't think that we can provide service that's adequate if we do not make some changes or plan for some changes and seriously consider that. As you know, we've been working with this Northwest Michigan group to figure out some ways we can collaborate, and that the presenter slides or whatever PowerPoints are on the COG website. Yesterday they just had the paper copies, but they were going to put the live stuff on there. And I would really encourage you guys to at least look at a couple of those. Tim McKee from Chippewa County, the UP, had some really good information about how the UP got together and really tackled a lot of these problems by working together. And then Nicole, who was our headline speaker or whatever, she had a lot of really good information, and has a really broad spectrum picture because she travels all over, even outside the country. So she sees things that, here in northern Michigan, I don't see, and her perspective is very valuable. So I'd really encourage you to take some time and look at those. What we're trying to do is share things that we don't have to have individually. None of us needs to have each piece of equipment ourselves anymore. We can link together and share that. Maintenance costs are very expensive. If you have two counties that share, well, as Ed Betcher said, if you have the black box, for lack of any other thing to say, if you have a black box and each PSAP needs one, each 911 center needs one, and needs that functionality, well, maybe 2 of them will share that. Maybe 4 of them will share it. With the connectivity that's available today, that is a possibility, and it makes sense to do that. It makes sense to, put those systems in place where you share costs and you share replacement and you share maintenance. It makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of benefits to that, but we don't have the infrastructure to build on to do those things right now. And we're trying to. We put in for a grant, 6 counties, or 6 PSAPs, 8 counties, but we can't count on grant funding to take care of all this. We just can't. It's a wonderful tool. We're committed, Jason and I both are committed to exploring every opportunity there is for grant funding. And the other directors who are involved in this group feel the same way. We're constantly looking for things, talking to our colleagues to see if there's anything more out there. And that's our job. We should do that. But that's not what we can count on to take care of this problem. So we've got to do more. Obviously, well, in my opinion, the biggest challenge that we face is the stable funding. Grand Traverse 911, in the time that I have been here, which has been a really long time, has never had a dedicated capital expenditure fund for 911. We've had capital expenditures from other funds, but not for 911. And I know that many years ago, and I might have been even before Sunny, I don't know, but when surcharge first became available, the director then recommended to the board that funding be set aside for capital expenditures and not be used for operations. And it never was. And I'm not here to second guess those decisions. I have no idea what the budgets were like then and what was going on. But it's been that way ever since. And we need to look at setting something up that will allow us to replace some of our technology and take advantage of some of these things that are out there that can help people. There are options available, and we've talked about this a lot of times. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because you have all this information, or if you have questions, I'm happy to get you whatever you need. But primarily, our options are general fund, surcharge, or millage. And surcharge and millage for those increases require going out for an election. I know that's not your favorite thing to hear, and it's not mine either, but that's the reality of where we are. If we want to increase funding, those are the options. And regardless of where the money comes from, we're always going to have technology and equipment that need to be replaced, upgraded. I mean, it used to be you bought something and it was good for 20 years. It's not like that anymore. And it took me a while to get my mind wrapped around that because it's really frustrating. It seems like, oh man, we just bought this. And then I come to you and say, we need to replace this, and I can see you're thinking the same thing. We just bought this. It's unfortunately, that is the world we live in. Things just aren't viable for 20 years anymore. They're not supported, they get obsolete, and it happens much faster than it ever has before.
Page down.
Huh?
Page down.
Oh. Maybe that means. Thank you. Okay, I can do it on my one upstairs. All right, and I just talked about the revenue and what it may generate. I gave you a chart in September, I believe it was, that indicated if we asked for this much money, it would raise this much money. And I still have that available. If any of you want to look at that again, I can send it to you. So it's there for you. How else can we make this better? Can we outsource or merge? Although there probably have been some privatization of 911 services, I'm really not that familiar with it. I know if it has happened, which I think it has, it's been in very few places. And I mean, that would be up to you to look at that if you wish to and see if that would be an option. Merging with other entities, consolidation, not today. We've gone down that road. We had a grant that was specifically written for that many years ago, and there's just too many roadblocks for that right now. However, doing what we're doing with the Northwest group is a good option. Working together to share those costs, to upgrade equipment, to build an infrastructure, a fiber network, the redundancy, and some of the benefits that can give us, besides costing money, is eventually we can put things in place that give us a stability in all of our 911 centers that we don't have right now. We all have backups for our 911 centers. If something happens, Leelanau's got our back, we've got theirs. But if all of our stuff goes to Leelanau, that's a lot of stuff to one PSAP. If all of their stuff comes here, that's a lot of stuff here, potentially. And if it's any kind of a long-term situation, that's not really sustainable for weeks, months, whatever it may take. If we have a fiber network and share a phone system, we can set something up so that the first 10 calls go to Leelanau, or as soon as their lines are tied up, maybe they go to CCE, maybe they go to Antrim or Kalkaska, and we have all these pre-plans in place so that we all know how to handle those calls, and the workload is spread out evenly among the whole area so that no one is getting entirely overwhelmed. That would provide a lot of benefit for us. And it's not just if something happened and we had to evacuate the PSAP. Sometimes we have situations where we have a major event, and if we could maybe send all of our non-emergency calls to another PSAP and say, hey, can you just take all the non-emergency stuff, all the news agencies that are calling and all the other stuff, so we don't have to deal with that. We can focus on emergencies and the event that's happening. Those things are very beneficial. Mandated, not mandated. Could it be discontinued? Yeah. What impact would it have? It would probably be better for me to leave that up to your imagination than to go into it a lot. Before 911, before we had a central dispatch here, and this was even before me, a lot of the agencies, almost all of them, had their own dispatcher. And although it functioned, the reality of that is I can't even comprehend the chaos and the lack of coordination that is in place in those situations. Because when we have everybody in the same room, we know what's going on. We know what everybody's doing, no matter what agency they're from. We know who needs what, and it's all coordinated. So I'd be happy to sit down and talk more about any of that if you want to, about that impact part of it. But it is not a mandated service. There's no legislation that I'm aware of that's going to change anything today or in the near future. There has been legislation, I think the last one was a couple years, maybe 2010, that talked about the mandated consolidation of dispatch centers, and it did not go through, but that wasn't the first time that had been suggested, and it probably won't be the last time. And that's another thing that we are looking at with the collaboration is if we work together and accomplish some of the goals that Lansing would like to see accomplished in a consolidation, but we can do it in a collaboration, then I think that we have a lot more chance of keeping things operating the way we want them to operate and maintaining our PSAPs and doing it the best way for us instead of having someone else tell us how that should be. And that was the catalyst, or one of the catalysts for the UP group. They wanted to maintain their individual dispatch centers, and yet they wanted to work together. So they're very interesting. They all got together and basically worked all the bugs out of this. Not everyone's participating. Negaunee is not part of it, but everybody else is. And when Tim was talking yesterday, there were a lot of benefits to the way that they have set that up. Whether that would work here or not, I'm not sure if all those components would, but there's definitely some good ideas to look at. And how many times have we heard interoperability, collaboration, regionalization, all those buzzwords that that we're hearing, which isn't all bad, but that's where the grant money is. So Ed said this yesterday, the grant that we put in for, which was just under $1 million to hopefully accomplish some of these projects, we couldn't have done it alone, individually. I mean, that's not what the grant was for. So a lot of funding that's becoming available or is available is only if you are working with other entities to do the things that we're talking about. So we'll keep working on that. I think June for the grant will hear back? Maybe May or June we'll hear back and see if and what got approved with that.
What was included in the application as far as fiber build-out?
Fiber build-out, CAD-to-CAD connectivity, and a phone system. Rest assured.
Be helpful.
Yeah, be very helpful. And they, that some of the awards from that grant in the prior rounds have been fairly substantial. So we're optimistic and hoping that maybe, at least we can get a couple of those projects knocked out. And what I'm looking for is a way for us to get the ball rolling, for us to get some successes under our belts, to say, yes, we can do this. Here's a project or two that we did and it works. And then, when we have to come back and say, okay, we can't find grant money right now, but this is what we need to do, we'll have already started, and maybe that will help lessen the pain for our commissioners. We'll see. The demographic changes, for us, it's the population and tourism. Just because the more people, the busier we are. That's not going to change. I would still love to have some kind of hotel, motel, 911 thing, but okay, I know. I don't think that there's a lot of support for that. But realistically, the tourism creates a huge workload for us. We have a lot of people here. There's just no other way around it. I know that, I would have loved to come in and told you that I found $10 million in gold coins in my backyard, like those people in California. But I didn't, and so we cannot reduce our funding. 85% of our budget is personnel, and as you know, we're always trying to get more people and, again, fill positions. We need more money, not less. I'm sorry to tell you that, but we do, and I wish it were different, but it's not. And that's all. Oh, no, one more thing. I just wanted to tell you about, the Facebook has been such a good tool for us. And I'm bringing it up because we just posted another weather thing just a little while ago. And the impact that has and the people that it reaches is really kind of cool. So we posted a thing about the weather. In 5 minutes, we had 1,400 people that saw it. 10 minutes, we had 2,250. 15 minutes was 3,000. 20 minutes was almost 4,000. 40 minutes was 5,700. And 50 minutes was 6,300. And I didn't look after that, but that is a really good way for us to get information out there and build these connections with our community. And the dispatchers are enjoying it. The supervisors that are posting, we get a lot of really good feedback, and the community is able to see 911 in a whole different light. They don't call 911 to wish us a happy day or anything like that. So the only time they deal with us usually is not a very good situation. So it really is beneficial for us to have that connection, and I just wanted to share that with you.
How many people on your Facebook page?
Huh?
How many people on your Facebook page?
18,800 and some.
You're ahead of me.
Yeah.
The other thing I think you ought to talk about is the surcharge that's going to be added to the telephone bill coming up, and how much that's going to be, and how we might be able to use that money.
Well, our surcharge in July will go from 66 cents to 80 cents. And do I get to pick how we use it?
No.
Oh.
Suggestions.
Okay, then why are you asking me?
Well, this is the budget time.
Depending on how the overall budget looks, which, I know that there were some good things, but depending on how that looks, maybe some of that funding can be set aside for some of these things. I would love it to all be set aside, and I didn't bring the figures down here with me about how much more it's going to give us. It'll give us some, but not a ton. It's not a huge amount of money.
75,000 or something.
Yeah,
think you might remember,
somewhere around there.
Yep,
But
75 this year, and
Like
150
next.
next year.
yeah,
It's already in this year's budget, though.
yeah.
Larry?
2 points, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Having sat on Central Disc Board for the majority of time on the board, there's 2 things that I think Jamel needs to touch on just a little bit more so you can get a little more flavor and a picture of what's going on in the industry and within her department, is the tremendous amount of turnover that our dispatch center and other dispatch centers have, but especially ours, because we have more multitasking responsibilities per dispatcher than maybe the larger metropolitan areas do. They focus on certain calls or certain things, and when they come up to Traverse City and Jamel hires them, they just get overwhelmed. And these are people with histories of working in dispatch centers, but we've always had, since I've been on a board, kind of and we have an old resolution that allowed Jamel to be basically to have the ability to overhire by 2 people because of her constant turnover. And I know we haven't brought that to anyone's attention, but that's an old resolution by the Board of Commissioners way back then. That
They don't expire, do they?
Huh?
They don't expire, do they?
I don't think so. But, at the Central Dispatch Board meeting, she continues to share concerns about getting people through the training, and then once they're through the training, it's not for them, and then they quit, and they're good people, and it's just a difficult environment up there because of the multitasking and the multiple number of things that happen all at once, that it's hard to keep it all in one. One person is being able to manage a number of things at one time, and the turnover is significant, and she's worked out a number of ideas to try to overcome that in terms of the selection process and the training. I want you to touch a little bit on that to see if just to let the board know that I think we have to be flexible with regard to your request to come in for staff. If that trend continues, and I don't know if there's going to be an answer other than maybe hiring more people and defractionizing these duties, more like major dispatch centers where people don't have the multitasking, they just, it's broken in half. The other thing I wanted you to touch on is you had brought up that there was a piece of legislation or an attorney general's opinion or something out there that said, and it's being reviewed right now, if we can get an update, that the Board of Commissioners can vote without going to the public an additional, I thought you said 83 cents to add to the operational cost and technology cost outside the parameters of the Public Service Commission, and would not require a vote of the people. And you were going to look into that. If we could get a report on those 2 items.
Sure. I'll start with the funding. It was the opinion of a couple of attorneys, Doug Van Essen and some attorneys in Van Buren County, that the way that the MPSC worded one of their documents, there was kind of a loophole, for lack of a better word, that would allow that. And so the director in Van Buren had contacted me, and we talked about it, and then I talked to Dave, and I gave the information to Chris Forsyth, and Chris just contacted me maybe last week to see what the status was, and Van Buren, I believe, is going to go ahead and implement that. I'll make sure, but that was the indication that I got, and so once I know that for sure, I'll bring it to you, lay it all out, and you can talk to Chris and see what his opinion is, and see if that's something that you may want to do.
And that's a potential $1 million? Mm-hmm. Well, okay. In a turnover situation, nothing's changed, and we just are still fighting that battle?
It is an industry-wide issue, but Larry's right. It does hit us hard because our dispatch center is on the cusp of being a small dispatch center where everyone does everything, and that's what works most of the time. However, sometimes we're pushed over that, and the level of functionality is extremely high, and there's just aren't a lot of people that can do what those people do. What happens when centers get bigger is they specialize. So one thing is people do not answer the phone and answer the radio. They either work radio or they work phone. And we've tried some call taker positions. The purpose of that wasn't to separate duties. It was trying to get people into the climate and work them into the position. And that didn't really pan out the way we'd hoped. But if I always tell people, if somebody really wanted to be successful, find a way to find the common denominator that tells that this person can do a dispatch job, because it isn't the training, it isn't education, it's I don't know what it is, a level of wackiness, but we can't identify it. So we're working on it. We still do. I talked to the other directors, and I actually have Jason communicated. Where was that guy that did the job fair? Yeah, so Jason found a PSAP in Virginia that was implementing like a one-day job fair, because for us, part of the frustration is the process is so long. And so what they did is everybody that wanted to apply, they brought them all in, and then they just put them through the steps so that it kind of, at least got to the end of who could get through that process and then move forward, because, and I think we might try that one of these days. But yeah, it is very frustrating. People come in and sometimes they go through the entire process, and the opinion of the interviewers and the people that they have sat with in dispatch are like, yeah, they're going to rock it, they're going to be able to do it, and they can't. And then sometimes you get somebody that people are like, I don't know, and then all of a sudden they can. So I wish I had an answer. We keep trying, though.
Okay, Charlie?
What is your general fund appropriation for 2014?
750, somewhere around
The-
750.
I'll answer that. The gross appropriation is $1,782,000. There are revenues, though. The wireless and the surcharge amount to a little over, well, it's $1,045,000. So the general fund appropriation is the difference
Which is,
after.
Which is what?
300,000 or something?
No, it would be about 740.
700? Is that about right?
740,000.
Okay, so question two, I asked you for a little survey a while back, and you did it. It was very nice. I didn't bring it with me. What kind of surcharge do we need to make this thing whole? We don't have to take out of our general fund.
Depends on what you mean by make whole.
Zero.
Balance.
No general fund.
Zero including capital expenditures?
I'm talking about what would we have to do, what kind of surcharge would have to happen so that we do not take money out of our general fund.
Well, I will email you back the paper I sent that I gave you in September.
Oh, I thought you might have had that with you.
No,
I also
I didn't
asked
bring
you
it
at the
with
same
me.
time what kind of millage would do that. And I think you did the same thing. It was very nice, but I don't.
if I recall, during the budget process, we had those discussions, and you provided me with a bunch of information. I did some number crunching on that. Jason, we come up with about $1.50? Is that about right? There you go,
147 for what? The surcharge?
Yeah.
What kind of
To really appropriately fund the capital and the
Would that
operating
include capital
expenditures
as
of
well?
our dispatch center.
So
Take
we could
about,
plan going forward with $1.47.
yeah,
What about the millage? What kind of number for that?
0.4 maybe? 0.45?
To do the same thing.
At least a mil, probably a little bit more.
1 mil will give you $4 million.
It's going to generate.
yeah,
Well, your total budget, though, is 1.7. That doesn't include any capital.
right.
Yeah.
So you're talking probably 2 million minimum.
But you got to take out the surcharge revenue.
So that would be like a half
Okay,
mil?
so I
The
guess I don't
750
know.
I think it was something like
I don't know the
0.45
I'm thinking
or close
it's
to
got to
that.
generate at least $1 million, if not more.
One other question. We did a Smart 911 program this year that cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. What kind of response you get from that?
We probably get about an average of maybe 35 or 40 profiles a month that come in on 911. That does not necessarily mean each of those profiles is beneficial for that 911 call. And I don't know, I don't have a total number like of how many people have signed up for the service.
Is that available, you think?
I'm working on that. We had a conference call scheduled last week and that got canceled, but we're going to reschedule that so we can talk to them and find out, because I do want to know. I want that
I'd like
information
to know
also.
myself. You think that program's been a success?
Yes,
I can vouch for that.
yeah,
I had an accident, I called 911, and they called, the call taker says, "Herb, is that you? Your smart 911 is working." So they had all my data right there at their fingertips, and they knew who I was, and they were able to pinpoint where I was at, and took care of it. So, I was very impressed that they could have that. The one thing I did find out, though, is when you make a phone call on your cell phone, and your car has a phone in the car, and you walk outside your car with your cell phone, it doesn't carry forward. So my wife was still panicking, trying to figure out where I was at because I was disconnected.
Right.
I was still inside the car, but I wasn't inside the car. So I did learn something there.
Charlie, I would like to say that, I mean, we were the first one in the state to implement Smart 911, and there have probably been, I'm just roughly guessing, at least 15 other centers that have implemented. Ottawa goes live on Monday. So if it were not something valuable, I don't think everybody else would be doing it also. Is it worth the expenditure?
I guess I'm looking at number of calls versus
Yep.
the amount of dollars. How do you weigh that?
I understand. I do. Let's find out how many people are registered for it, and maybe we can give us a little more information on it.
Dan?
I've
Excuse
heard,
me, Charlie, are you done?
I'm done. I think Dick was next.
whatever.
Go ahead.
Okay. Dan had his-
All I was going to say is that, from what I've heard, quite a few people are going for the Smart 11, or 911 at the local fire stations. They're getting quite a few customers at Blair, I know that.
Yeah, and we do appreciate, because those are folks that don't access computers or use computers all the time, so they're using the responders to help them get registered, and that's helpful.
Okay, Dan.
I've heard a lot of numbers. I just want to reiterate, we did get an increase on our surcharge, and what was that increase again?
It goes from 66 cents to 80 cents.
Okay, and did you say that equated how many dollars?
About 150,000 a year for 2015,
Okay.
but it starts July of this year, so it's about 75,000.
Now, are we obligated to use that money for 911 since it's a 911 surcharge?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
Does that answer your budget question, Jamel?
I just,
No, because there's that whole switcheroo thing.
Yeah, well.
Never mind.
well, we have an appropriation from the general fund. There are a lot of counties, their surcharge covers all their costs.
Yeah,
Several around us, all their
Yeah.
911 costs are covered by the surcharge because it's high enough. I think, I was talking to either, it was Emmett or one of them, it's $1.60 up there.
Wow.
And it covers their cost 100%. They've never put a dime of general fund money ever in. But we have, we had $1 million in, and now we have 750,000 in. But, she doesn't have any capital, and she can't replace with these old, she put Lily Tomlin out of business with the equipment that she's got.
I'm very interested in the concept that
Lily Tomlin.
you mentioned,
Millages, or pass
that
the
there's a possibility the
surcharge.
board could
Yeah, but they,
up that surcharge without a vote, and you had a number that we could possibly do that. Could that get us to the 150 that we need with the current surcharge?
ours was so
Yeah.
low.
Wouldn't that be a miracle? That'd be nice.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
That's more, that is more of a, for me, I would absolutely say, yes, do it. You obviously are going to need to confer with Chris and see what he's got to say about it,
I
because.
agree with our administrator. It'd be nice to see it not come out of general fund, and I agree with Commissioner Rainey. It'd be nice to see it be, the emphasis on the right syllable. I mean by that, the people that are using the services pay for it,
Right.
and I think the surcharge is the way to go. So, hope we can.
I think it's really important to note, this is, we're talking about today's equipment that is not adequate to handle our needs, but is handling it according to the customers. They call and they get emergency taken care of. The problem is that we got to get to the next level, the next phase, because texting takes a very little amount of broadband
Yeah.
like 2 in comparison to
To
100.
avoid.
Kilobits,
If
And
someone,
3
yeah,
kilobits.
if someone doesn't have voice, if they don't have enough connectivity to get voice, they still can text because it doesn't take as much.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, because you're up in your hunting cabin, and you don't have any cell phone coverage, but you might have texting coverage. And they were talking about a guy who was there for a day, that finally was able to, he texted his, or I guess for 6 hours.
Texted his daughter.
Texted his daughter and said, "I'm not feeling good." And his daughter woke up the next morning, saw the text, then called 911, and then had somebody come out to get him. And by that time, it was too late.
He died on the way to the hospital.
Yeah,
But he would have been saved if they would have been able to take a text in the 911
yeah.
center.
So I mean, we got to get into this. The other thing is the video thing, that if something's going on and say a bank is being robbed, they can take and show the video to the officer as he's coming into the scene, and the officer can see what's happening from
Inside the
within the
building.
building before he gets there. So there's some huge things that are happening that this collaboration could start to be able to give us to be able to get there. And we got to go to that next level. Mr. Thomas?
Did anybody hear what happened in DC today?
I'm afraid to ask.
Well, it was just on TV, and it shows the importance of having a good 911. An old duffer was right across the street from a fire station, and he was having a heart attack. Somebody run into the fire station and said, "We got a guy out here in trouble." And they said, "You got to call 911." And the trouble is that when they called 911, they dispatched the ambulance to the wrong part of the town. So, the old boy's dead, but other than that, they did wonderful. That just happened, it was just on the news today.
Well,
So that tells you that
A
it's
big fear.
important for them to do their job.
I think that brings up one thing that was touched on yesterday, and I'm really glad that you funded the position in GIS, because the GIS world is just, and 911 are meshed. There's just no two ways about it. We don't do things anymore with the maps we used to. It's all GIS based. And one of our presenters yesterday said if she had a kid that was in high school or college and wasn't sure what direction they wanted to go, she would tell them to pursue GIS because it's just exploding and it's going to continue to.
Chris, you have any questions?
No, not really. She's, the only thing I would like to suggest is I think you need to get the message out regarding the antiquated equipment that we have. And I think that in a large part, it's that the Board of Commissioners needs to do exactly the same thing. We need to educate people in Grand Traverse County that we've got this old stuff that just isn't keeping up anymore, and we have to do something. Quite honestly, East Bay Township, they have a little extra millage for ambulance service. Peninsula Township is very supportive of public safety in that they fund a road patrol officer. So does East Bay, et cetera, et cetera. Blair does the same thing. I think if we can get a cohesive effort among the township supervisors and the village supervisors, I'd like to see something moving forward before the end of the year as far as upgrading our equipment. I'd like to see a plan, something that you can present to us and say, I've researched it, this is what we need, this is the dream equipment that I'd like to have, this will get us by, this is a happy medium, just not only to educate us, but to educate the public. And then we need to go out and we need to tell people.
I think the grant will be the big teller as to where we're going to go, what we can do.
At least it will hopefully get us started. And the seminar that we had, we put that link on the Facebook page so people, and we're trying to get some of that information out in the community. I do agree with you, we're a long way from where we need to be, but we are starting to put some information out and let people know that, and building those relationships, and I think that's a good thing. But we are kind of in a holding pattern, at least for a little bit here. But that doesn't mean we can't do research and that type of stuff.
Okay. for your short presentation. You've taken 45 minutes. Thank you.
Well, that's because you talked all the time.
I do. It wasn't just me, but is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I stopped talking a long time ago. I've just been answering questions.
Any other commissioners' comments? Jamel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your staff. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Yeah, poor Jason. Here's your
sorry.
pluggy thing.
Okay. So Kevin, are you up next?
If you wish.
Is yours short or is yours long?
Short.
You got MSU.
I thought MSU was
You
next.
got MSU on your agenda
Your
next.
list is,
Pardon?
MSU agenda's on your
Well, okay, we'll do the MSU. Okay.
yeah, but that's the list, that's where you got
Okay.
them.
Sorry about that.
Just get plugged in, switch laptops here if we can. My name is Patrick Hudney. I'm the district coordinator with MSU Extension. Also with me today is Jenny McKellar, our office manager for Grand Traverse County MSU Extension, and Jen Ritter is also with us today in the audience. She's the coordinator for the Injury Prevention North Shore Safe Kids program.
And you had one of your staff received quite an award? Jennifer Berkey?
Jennifer Berkey did receive an award, Industry Person of the Year, through the National Cherry Festival and the Cherry Marketing Committee. Jennifer received that award for all the years that she provided leadership and support for the Industry Day during the National Cherry Festival. What the Industry Day is at our Northwest Michigan Horticulture Research Station located on Center Road in Leelanau County. We have educational programs. We market cherry products and all the products that are made out of that beautiful fruit that grows so prolifically here. And it's a way that ties the festival into the industry, and that the reason there's a festival to begin with is because of this industry. So this group of producers, marketers, and community members recognized Jennifer Berkey this year as the Cherry Industry Person of the Year, which was a tremendous honor for her and certainly for our office. What I'm opening up for you is an electronic version of the packet that Jenny McKellar just distributed to you that we are providing for you today, and again to answer the questions that you would outline for each of the departments to respond to. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to read to you.
Oh, no.
Inside joke. Dave, well, I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to read this PowerPoint to you. It's actually a document of a variety of materials that we've shared with you previously. And to answer your questions most accurately, it gave me another opportunity to provide these documents to you again and refer back to them to answer your questions. So starting off, who are our customers? Our customers are the residents of Grand Traverse County and the residents of the state of Michigan. And how many of these residents are served, and at what cost is the second question you have. So I'll reference you to page 1 of the report that you have in front of you, and it's also up on the screens around you. If you look at the text box at the bottom of the page, you'll see our participation numbers, again from 2012. This is our most recent annual report for MSU Extension in Grand Traverse County, and you'll see specifically the number of Grand Traverse County residents served by our programs in each of the 4 institutes that our educational staff work through, and you'll also see the program totals for the Safe Kids North Shore programs also related in that text box. So those specifically are the numbers of county residents served by our programs. How they were served and the educational programs, workshops, are all examples provided throughout this report. It's a 20-page report that you can see specifically what programs were offered that served Grand Traverse County residents in each of those areas. Why are these services important? Well, we believe these services are important because they directly affect the health, welfare, and economics of Grand Traverse County and Grand Traverse County citizens. And again, you'll see that reflected throughout the report in the programs that are offered through all 4 of our institutes. Specifically, if I could reference you, I know I can do this, Jen, to the next page, and it's tab number 2 in your packet of information, is a 5-year budget comparison. And this gets to the costs, the services at what costs. We've provided for you a breakdown of our budget that Grand Traverse County provides to the partnership that is MSU Extension, going back to 2010 all the way up to our most recent 2014 budget. You will see reflected in this budget every line item that Grand Traverse County supports in our budget. I'd like to ask you to refer to the bottom of the page, which is the yellow chart at the bottom, where you'll see the Grand Traverse County allocation through general fund dollars to MSU Extension in 2010 was $344,319. In our most recent budget, our 2014 general fund allocated budget from Grand Traverse County, you'll see that Grand Traverse County allocated $267,309. That's over a 22% reduction in general fund expenditures by Grand Traverse County going back 5 years. And there's reasons for that. And we'll talk about those a little bit later when we talk about your questions around alternative ways of providing current services and funding. But I want to point that out, that those are real dollars. This only reflects the general fund investment by Grand Traverse County in this partnership. This certainly doesn't reflect the $8 to $10 that are matched by university resources for every dollar that Grand Traverse County provides. In that budget directly, you see reflected 2.4 full-time equivalents of county employees. It doesn't include the myriad of extension educators, program staff, and others that provide the educational programs and workshops that you see the impacts reported on in this report. The investment that you make in MSU Extension for the partnership is based in what's called a memorandum of agreement. And if you'll refer to the third tab in your packet of information today, you'll see a copy of that memorandum of agreement and the associated plan of work. This agreement for extension services provided by Michigan State University is the 5-year overarching agreement that we have with Grand Traverse County and counties throughout the state. This is a standardized agreement that we have with county government. It talks about the investment that county government makes, and it talks about what the return on that investment means from the resources of Michigan State University being invested back in the county. There's no specific dollar amount attached to that overarching 5-year agreement. That agreement was first signed in 2012, and it's good until 2017. Every year, that agreement is predicated on a plan of work, which is the financial arrangement or the budget agreement between county government and Michigan State University Extension. That would be page 3 and 4, again, underneath tab number 3 of your hard copies, and also on the screen you have in front of you. And I'll move to that so it can be reflected on the television. I'm now referencing the plan of work or the fiscal arrangement that we have between Grand Traverse County and MSU Extension in the current fiscal year, 2014. Again, the memorandum of agreement is an overarching agreement that's predicated on an annual budgeting process called a plan of work that we bring forward through our budget request every year to support that overarching agreement. You can see the specific contributions by Michigan State University Extension. We state that we'll have at least one extension educator whose primary office of operation will be the county extension office. We have many more than one that we house in Grand Traverse County. Counties can choose to purchase additional FTEs of academic staff. We have some counties in the state that want a dedicated county agricultural educator, specifically and exclusively for that county. Counties can have that, but they have to purchase that. I have not made that request. You'll not see that request included in this budget. The only additional staff that you pay for and have included in this budget is the half-time 4-H program coordinator position, is an additional investment on top of the base that provides for a full-time 4-H program coordinator to serve Grand Traverse County. We have a very large, a very viable, and a very active 4-H community in Grand Traverse County. This county deserves and needs a full-time 4-H program coordinator, and that's included in our budget and in that request. That cost to Grand Traverse County was an additional $28,325 to our base assessment. Our base assessment that is standard across the state is $31,000 per year plus 30 cents per resident of the county based on the most recent census figures. That figure for Grand Traverse County equates to $57,096 plus the $28,325 for the other half-time of the 4-H program coordinator, and that equals $85,421 that MSU Extension receives from Grand Traverse County. For that $85,421, you receive all of the services that MSU Extension provides and a full-time 4-H program coordinator. So that specifically is the return on your investment. The rest of our budget, again, if you want to refer back to tab number 2, you'll see that $85,000, well, it's $496. We actually have a little bit more in our county budget than we will bill you for this year. That's for the contractual services. That $85,496 is what pays for that partnership. The rest of the costs that are in the Grand Traverse County budget are associated with those 2.4 FTEs, or full-time equivalents, of county support staff. And then it also includes other costs that the county incurs, such as our computer charges, telephone, internet, a little bit of travel, $2,000 for our county employees. We provide the travel and operating for our university employees. You'll see $500 for employee training. So that's our total budget. As a whole, you have it right in front of you. The last document, excuse me, that I'd like to refer you to is under tab number 4. And again, this is a document that I had previously shared with you. And this is a MySpartan impact report. And this gives you a breakdown of the impacts of the university as a whole in Grand Traverse County, with Grand Traverse County, and on Grand Traverse County. A figure that I want to point out to you is the 4th category down on that page, which is spending with local businesses. The university spent last fiscal year $1,666,382 on local businesses. We pull those figures directly from our accounting office down at Michigan State University, where any business that has a Grand Traverse County address, we can pull those businesses by address, and we can directly correlate that back to dollars that the university spent in Grand Traverse County. And I just want to point that out to you. That's a real figure. It's because we're here. It's because we're doing business here. It's because we're hosting our conferences, our workshops, our trainings, and other programs here. Those are real dollars. The overall economic impact of our university on the county is over $41, almost $42 million in 1 year. And that takes into consideration the values of bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs that county residents in Grand Traverse County has. It takes in the economic impact of our programs. It takes into consideration the dollars we spend locally on businesses. It takes in lots of figures. And again, if you go to this website, you can click on a hot link that takes you directly to the report that the university commissions through the Anderson Economic Group that provides these figures for the university annually. So again, I wanted to remind you that this investment has tremendous impact in Grand Traverse County on the lives of families, communities, and on businesses in Grand Traverse County, but it also has a real dollar impact on Grand Traverse County. So again, I wanted to take this opportunity to remind you of those impacts. Moving down on your questions, when you talk about alternative ways of providing current services, outsourcing, general fund budget reductions, well, I would say we've done that. We've been doing that. If you look at the reduction in general fund allocation that Grand Traverse County provides going back to 2010 to where we currently are in 2014 is because of many of the structural changes that our organization has went through. If you remember when I was here previously, we talked about all of those changes. We reduced our administrative overhead statewide to reinvest those dollars in program positions. Our staff in our offices are no longer generalists. They're specialists in their field. In today's day and age, we can no longer afford to have generalists. We need specialists. So all of our staff have specialist roles. The new staff that we hire are specialists in their field. The area that they cover geographically depends upon the intensity of the industry they work with. Many people locally, and names you'll recognize, are here for a reason. Dr. Duke Elsner. Dr. Elsner is our viticulture and enology educator. He specifically and exclusively works with the grape and wine industry in northwest lower Michigan. The epicenter of that industry is in Grand Traverse and Leelanau counties. Dr. Nikki Rothwell is our district horticulturalist. She's a cherry specialist out at the Northwest Michigan Horticulture Research Station. And I can list on and on and on. If you refer to the last page of our annual report, you'll see a list of 40-plus educators that are required to serve Grand Traverse County needs, and you see their work reflected in that annual report. So our organization went through some difficult financial times, as the state did. We had reductions in our state funding. We had some reductions in our federal funding. Most of that was grant reductions. And certainly, we worked with county governments during difficult fiscal times to allow our budgets to be examined, to work with county governments to examine those budgets and look at what that investment is. but I think our changes were smart. I think the impacts of our programs are obvious, and I think our intentions at the time have proved to be accurate. One thing that I've found in our new structure is when we have staff that are traveling into a part of the state to offer their educational programs and services, in other words, staff that aren't housed right here, we're finding they're traveling to the population centers of regions or communities. Our numbers in Grand Traverse County are huge. They're growing every year because when we have staff that travel in to offer a workshop, they're offering it in Traverse City because it's a population center, because the facilities are here. So we're having individuals travel in from neighboring counties outside of Grand Traverse County itself to participate in these programs. That being said, the numbers that are reported on the first page of our report are Grand Traverse County numbers. We call those numbers to be county-specific because we provide these annual reports to all of our county partners. With that, I would like to answer any questions that I can for you.
Dan?
Well, 13,317, is that the number of people in Grand Traverse County that you say you affect?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you mentioned $87,000 that we pay out of our general fund.
85,000, yes.
85. Well, can you give me a round number of, there are other little things, not little things, other things you mentioned besides that. What do you think we totally give you for these 13,000 people a year?
Our total budget, you'll see reflected under tab 2, which is $267,309. That's what Grand Traverse County invests in this partnership.
We pay that money and to affect 13,000 people.
You pay the contract of $85,400 and I just said $490. The rest of that $267,309 is for the support staff, is for the infrastructure costs for the county department, such as IT, telephones, so on and so forth. So, Commissioner Lathrop, your total investment by the county is $267,309. The contract with the university, where we provide our staff and our services, is the $85,000 figure.
Now, when I crunch my numbers on my little phone here, I think that comes out to about $1,800 a person. Would that be about right?
I'll trust your figures. I have not broken that down.
Okay.
But that number would increase greatly if you look at the investment of state and federal resources, that the dollars that Grand Traverse County brings back. Again, it's going to be an $8 to $10 for every dollar the county puts in, the university invests in this partnership.
Okay, and so in some ways like a grant that we get. Sometimes we get a grant that we have to kick in some money ourselves and we get more money back.
Well, that allows me to address the mandated question. No, we're not a mandated service, like the majority of the services and departments that Grand Traverse County has. Our mandate comes from federal legislation. That federal legislation goes back many, many, many years. It allows state and local resources to be dedicated to secure the federal resources and thus the state resources and the county resources to make the three-legged stool. The partnership that we have is state, federal, and local. That state investment comes through Michigan State University. We're a separately funded line item in the state budget. It's underneath the higher education subcategory. There's the 15 public universities, then there's MSU Extension, and the Michigan Agricultural Experiment Stations. We're two separately funded line items. So our organization, MSU Extension, and Ag Bio Research, which is reflected in the Horticulture Research Station as one of the stations out in the field, those are two separately funded line items at the state level. We receive no general fund investment from Michigan State University. We're two separately funded line items at the state level. That's where the state investment comes from. The local investment comes from our county boards of commissioners.
How's the Farm Bill affect?
Farm Bill affects us hugely, and we're very happy it was just signed and approved.
So that's going to keep the research station open, basically.
Not just the research station, but that's our federal dollars for MSU Extension. With that, another great segue, we've brought for you, for your information, our most recent legislative report, which breaks down our funding at the state level and the federal level. And you'll see local and grants in here for the entire organization. And it highlights programs, our research programs, and our educational programs that come out of that research and how it serves Michigan. So we thought this would be helpful for you, too, as you're doing your research.
And also, I appreciate the white paper that you were presenting to us on looking at the retiree benefits.
It's another example of the resources that MSU Extension has that assists local communities in making difficult decisions. You're welcome.
Larry?
I think if you help us get a little bit more of an impact on your presence here and what you do. It's my understanding, the second, or close to the second highest business industry in the state of Michigan is agricultural. And of course, Grand Traverse County and the surrounding region is highly ag, with all our farmers, cherry farmers and other types of farmers that do crops and cattle and those kinds of things. My understanding, when I've met with them on my particular campaign, going around talking with them with regard to my county commission races, is that the number one issue they talk to me about is the importance of MSU Extension and what you do for them to assist them in their farm operations where they would not have that available to them. If you could touch on that briefly, if you could.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. Agriculture is the second leading industry in the state of Michigan, and it's number one or number two in every one of the 9 counties that I serve in northern Michigan. MSU Extension and the Ag Bio Research Stations are the research and development arm of the agriculture industry for the state. It's some of our very traditional work. We are rooted in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at Michigan State University, but certainly that partnership of taking research-based information and applying it to local needs is what makes us unique. I've had people say to me that the information revolution, the internet, has made extension outdated or irrelevant because I can go online and I can Google whatever question I have and get a multitude of answers. And I love when someone points that out to me because I'll immediately point back to them that, yeah, there's an awful lot of information that you get from a Google search, but be very careful on what you determine to be scientifically research-based. There's a lot of organizations or entities that call what they do research-based. We're a university. Our material is peer-reviewed. We will not put the stamp of approval of research-based unless it meets the rigor of the university process. Certainly, if you're a corn producer in northern Michigan, and I've had this conversation with Frank Lipinski down in the southern part of the county for years, you can go online and you can pull off all the corn information you want from Iowa, which is the number one corn producing state and the international leader of corn production, but their soils are different, their markets are different, their climates are different. So we too can take that information that comes out of Iowa, but we apply it locally because our climate's different, our markets are different, our soils are different. It's a completely different game for corn producers in Michigan than it is for corn producers in Iowa.
I was at a 500-acre corn farm this summer where everything's automated. They could go, GPS unit, they go a mile straight and never deviate. It's really interesting to see how they, in the big plant farms, and this was a leased farm because he couldn't afford the equipment. And so he was letting somebody else do all the planting. $35,000 just for the seed to plant half of his acreage. It was incredible. So it's quite an investment. So I was very impressed. But also, our corn grows this tall. Their corn grows over my hand. It's just amazing how tall you walk around and you get lost in the corn fields, and down here we're not quite that tall, I don't think. So our soils are a lot different.
Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't reference cherries.
Yeah.
And this is the National Center for Tart Cherry Production. The research station that we have, it has a Traverse City address, but it's actually located in Leelanau County, is internationally recognized for the research and educational programs that come out of that. We have other states that their staff travel here all the time. We have other countries that we host that come here because of the importance of the work that goes on at that research station. If you've not visited the research station, please take the time to do so. Next summer, I'll take you myself if you'd like to do a tour, and we'd love to show that off to you. It is the only station in the state that is grower-owned. You might not know that. That station is exclusively owned by the growers in Northwest Michigan. They bought the land, they built the station, they lease it to the university for $1 a year, and the agreement is we staff it, and we provide the research-based education and programs that are needed in Northwest Lower Michigan. Because back in the 70s, the closest fruit station was downstate on the Ridge, which is a huge fruit growing belt by Grand Rapids, close to Grand Rapids. And again, the climate's different, the soils are a bit different, and the farmers up here recognize the importance and the need to have that research station. We're really proud of the partnership we have with industry.
Sonny?
Well, you know, our partnership with MSU Extension goes back a long time. I don't think we can, you know, we always sit back and we look at the dollars, you know, and you know, I've even made the comment myself a number of times, okay, what do I get between the $86,000 that is our 5-year contract and the $260,000 that we will budget this year, you know? So there's basically $180,000 worth of additional funding going into our 2014 budget over and above the contract. That being said, you know, the value and the bang for the buck that we get is absolutely huge. Now, I recently participated in the Northwest Michigan Orchard and Vineyard Show. And, you know, those types of events, those types of educational opportunities, the opportunity to see the equipment deal with all of the different kinds of herbicides and things that these people are dealing with, it simply would not be available to the farmers in our community without MSU Extension's help. You know, we forget sometimes, you know, that how big agriculture is to us. You know, those orchards aren't there just so as the tourists can come and drive out on the peninsula. You know, and we don't hold the National Cherry Festival because we bring tourists to the open space. We celebrate the harvest. You know, sometimes I'm not quite sure why we celebrate it when we celebrate it because our cherries aren't ready to harvest. But the fact is, the National Cherry Festival was started here in Traverse City for the purpose of celebrating the harvest of the cherries. And that history goes back a long, long time. And, you know, when I look at MSU Extension, sure, we, you know, like every other department, I can nitpick this and that and one thing after another. But the fact is, we get a big bang for our buck. You know, if we look at cutting budgets and we say, okay, you know, we have citizen planner programs and we have master gardener programs. They're great programs, but can we truly afford to continue to keep them? But there's such an insignificant amount when it talks about the overall benefit of MSU Extension. I oftentimes, you know, I struggle with this one in particular because I know what the difference is between that 86,000 and the 260. But when I sit back and I, you know, in my one line of work, I deal with the agricultural industry all the time. And I see what that industry is doing in our community, and they're growing huge. You know, they're putting in a whole new system at Shoreline Fruit in
Right.
Williamsburg here. We should start.
Got the big cranes out there.
They're probably going to start that system within the next 3 weeks, you know, weather permitting, you know. So the agricultural industry is huge to our community, and without the support of MSU Extension, I don't know where those people would go to get that support. You know, we recently, you know, with the Orchard and Vineyard Show, you know, I've done business with people that were coming from Washington State, and Canada, and Minnesota, and all different places that we locally have done business with those people, and they would not have even been here without, you know, these type of events.
I would like to respond, and Commissioner Wheelock, through your challenges of continuing to ask me, okay, the $85,000 that we invest to have these resources, where does the rest of it go? It helps us to craft the presentation that we provided for you today, a similar presentation that I provided for you on the evening of November 14th, the night before opening day. I just want to point that out again. And as I was driving up to camp about 10 o'clock that night, it allowed me to reflect on my appreciation of being able to respond to those questions. All kidding aside, we're showing you every line item the county provides. It's here for you because you ask a valid question. We want to give you an accurate and valid response. This is what that return on that investment is. And again, reminding you, going back 5 years, we've cut our budget over 22% from what the county provides. That's not a sustainable trend. Okay, that's not a sustainable trend, but we continually say we want to be part of the solution and not add to the problem. Our structural changes at MSU Extension allowed us to be nimble and test the system. We've rebounded greatly. The Farm Bill is signed. Happy to report the governor has included a 6.1% budget increase for MSU Extension and Ag Bio Research in its next budget proposal that was released. That investment shows that our changes are having the intended impacts. Our programs are relevant, and they're having the impacts that we intend for them to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, two things. I owned a cherry farm for 15 years on Old Mission Peninsula, so I really know how important the stuff you do is, how devastating your crop can be messed up if you do it wrong. And I was in 4-H as a child. What I like about that was that parents and children, at least in my experience through 4-H, were involved, families, and I support that so much. So I'm echoing what Sonny just said. I think we get a lot of bang for a buck with you guys.
I appreciate that.
As a 40-year volunteer for the Cherry Festival, I can vouch for the impact that it's had. And my focus has always been trying to put more cherries back into the Cherry Festival. And it's always a challenge because it is a tourist-rated program along with education about what cherries do and how they do it. And so it's really important that we have that relationship, but also want to call your attention that tonight's meeting, there will be a presentation by the Cherry Festival of some of the impact that they have on our community. So I'm looking forward to that. Chris?
Patrick, we all know the importance of agriculture, which brings me immediately to the importance of bees. And I'm hearing more and more and reading more and more about problems with bees. And I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Is MSU Extension working with beekeepers at all?
Oh, very much so. Hive collapse disorder for other
And it has
names.
nothing to, it's not a budget question, I was just curious.
No, certainly. We have something called Project Green. Project Green is a state-funded program to generate research, extension, educational networks through that benefit the green industries in the state of Michigan, the plant industries in the state of Michigan. I sat this year on the Project Green Grant Allocation Board, and we funded 3 projects specifically to deal with some of the hive collapse disorders, some of the things that we're seeing. So yes, we have a specialist, Zachary, it's Huang. He's Chinese, I believe, is his ethnicity. But Dr. Wang is an expert, and that is his field of study, and he's our person at Michigan State University who's our point person. So we are, very much so.
Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Great as usual.
And as always, I usually harass you more, but I thought today was some time to give you a little credit for what you do.
Oh, you were kind today. Thank you.
I think if you want to see the impact on your 4-H program, go to the fair and talk to those kids as they're showing their animals and what they're doing and how much confidence they have developed because of the animal and because of the 4-H program.
Well, I'd also remind you that this evening at your board meeting, there's going to be a number of 4-Hers here this evening, and they're part of a 4-H program that's looking at government and operation. It's in partnership with the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians and also local units of government. Karen Stevens, your new incoming Grand Traverse County 4-H program coordinator, is going to be here with those youth this evening, and I won't be with them, but please make them feel welcome.
I did have a chance to be able to go and address that group last week, and there's some really good kids in there that ask some great questions. So, and they are learning more about our government and what they're doing. So I've invited them here, and it's going to be exciting to have them here as part of our Board of Commissioners meeting.
On that note, if you see them before the meeting and you happen to be hanging around looking for something to do, they wanted a little Q&A session with commissioners, but I said, it's a pretty packed day. If you have a little time, though.
So if you would like to have them have some time with you, or you go spend some time with them, they'd be happy to sit down and talk to you about your feelings about county government, how you got there, what's your feelings from what you got here to today as to what you found, and because they want to know more about what's happening with county government in particular. So, okay, thank you. Kevin, thank you.
Drain Commissioner, this one.
Yes.
Slideshow. And show.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, everyone. My name is Kevin McEllier, your Grand Traverse County Drain Commissioner. Appreciate this opportunity to very briefly present my 2014 proposed budget of $18,000.
And the raindrops coming down.
More importantly, this is a great opportunity for all the departments to get before you and kind of re-educate about what their challenges are, what their missions, what their opportunities are, and everyone is on a shoestring budget, and it's very important for every $18,000 to work hard pursuant to taxpayer dollars. So, as I mentioned, an $18,000 budget. As following Patrick and all your other department heads, I want to answer each question that has been requested of you, so you're comparing apples to apples in your budget. Foremost, it is a state-mandated service. The Drain Commissioner is responsible for developing and maintaining county drains through assessments, but only if petitioned by the county citizens. The Drain Commissioner is powerless to proceed on a drain project unless it's been petitioned by the majority of the residents in that neighborhood. Therefore, it's serving the majority of the residents in that neighborhood and not just the minority of the residents. I want to quickly elaborate on that. It's a good rule of thought. I get numerous calls every day from citizens who may have a flooded basement, but if it's just one flooded basement that's going to benefit from a drain district, that's not likely to come to fruition. It needs to be a whole neighborhood. All the neighbors are being flooded, and they are all being assessed for that flooding situation. Looking on briefly, the other mandated services mandated by the Drain Commissioner is maintaining the court-ordered lake levels and providing for the triannual inspections of those water control structures. Last two, providing reviews as required of the Michigan Subdivision Control Act. We don't see that as much anymore because a lot of them are condominium subdivisions that they're able to get around that requirement. But also historically in Grand Traverse County for decades now, had been reviewing all developments for stormwater control through the local stormwater control ordinances. Finally, and not least, it takes a lot of my time. By law, the Drain Commissioner is mandated to be a member of the Parks and Rec Commission as well as the Board of Public Works. Other questions on your list were dedicated staffing. Currently, just the Drain Commissioner. As state law mandates, one Drain Commissioner is elected every 4 years on a partisan basis. You asked who are our customers. I think at last glance, the county population was roughly 90,000 citizens. So they are all the customers of the Drain Commissioners. If they all have complaints, concerns whatsoever relative to stormwater runoff or flooding, they are customers. And therefore, if you do the math of some 90,000 citizens divided by the current proposed $18,000 in cost, equals 20 cents per citizen for providing these services, which is priceless when you consider the health, safety, welfare, and the economic and environmental impacts as mandated by the Drain Code of 1956. We asked, why is this important? As you all know, we cherish our resources in Grand Traverse County. Stormwater runoff is without a doubt, that is laden with sediments and nutrients, is the greatest pollutant by volume entering our lakes and streams, requiring dredging of harbors, expensive infrastructure maintenance costs. And as I mentioned, historically in Grand Traverse County, because we value the quality of our life, and it's our duty to preserve these resources for generations to come. I moved to Traverse City in Grand Traverse County because of the land and water, my love for the land and water. So basically, this is all about our water resources. Here you see a picture of MSU's campus. Potential concerns that could impact services. I used this picture of the Red Cedar River back in 1966 as a result of the unregulated stormwater runoff, and you can see the algae and nutrient loading that's happening in the river there. I'm a graduate from Michigan State as a landscape architect, and it was a sight to behold. The next picture, my point here is that unregulated stormwater runoff will increase the likely demand for new taxation drainage districts. In the past, we've been able to develop mitigate the runoff on each development site rather than impacting and requiring further drainage districts downstream. So as I said, this is an old picture of the Red Cedar River in 1966. This picture now, 35 years later, while it's still not as pristine as Grand Traverse waters, but nonetheless, it took 35 years to implement regulated stormwater control to stop the nutrient loading. My point of this 35-year lapse in time frame is to just remind you, as we're all aware, that Grand Traverse County citizens expect this level of standard in our resources. And also, when this population in Grand Traverse County does reach 100,000, I don't have a crystal ball to determine when that will be, but then there are federal and state mandates that will kick into effect requiring stormwater controls. So Grand Traverse County has always been ahead of the curve in mandating proper stewardship of our resources, and it will become mandatory as the future arrives. Other questions that you have asked about revenue increases, I don't think that's justifiable to the Drain Commissioner's program. It's not a revenue generating program. It's not justifiable to the Drain Code program because the taxation of these drain districts is only allowed to minimally maintain the existing systems for the benefit of those that are being assessed and benefiting by those existing county drainage systems. Another question that was asked, are there any alternatives to outsourcing or merging? And quite simply, I would say the Drain Code statute does not allow you to merge with other county drain districts. Each county is mandated to have a drain commissioner as long as that population meets a certain threshold. There are some counties that don't have are not as populated, and they're not required to have a drain commissioner. So again, we could not merge with Benzie County or Leelanau County. And then outsourcing, that again, that would be against statute. It's required by statute. The drain commissioner is an elected environmental stewardship of the representatives serving the needs of the people. Looking ahead, I want to, as winding up this presentation, as you all know, last year the previous Board of Commissioners reorganized the Office of the Drain Commissioner and diminished the duties to look at other ways that we can work with the budget, just as you are this year. Nonetheless, our citizens still right now are very confused, and they still expect their elected official to handle all stormwater concerns that I receive daily calls. As I mentioned last year, the Drain Commissioner's budget was reduced from $260,000 to the current proposed $18,000. This is just kind of relative to where are we going in the future and what kind of impacts will happen. In the last year during this transition, as I mentioned, all calls coming into the office, the citizens expect their concerns to be dealt with. Whether that's questioning the Drain Commissioner, why is my neighbor putting their snow on my property? Mr. Drain Commissioner, why is my neighbor putting his snow in the creek? Mr. Drain Commissioner, why is my basement flooded? Can you provide relief to all those? Every one of those situations require an on-site visit to determine if it's a road commission responsibility, if it's an MDEQ responsibility, or now with the reorganization of the office, the stormwater control measures are now to be handled by local municipalities, and so as another option, I would then refer them to the local municipality to seek resolution of these matters. Again, I'm going on with details, but every call requires an investigative, site visit to determine the cause, concerns, and resolution of those. Predominantly, it's relative to natural drain law. Grand Traverse County has always educated our citizens that the upstream owner shall respect the rights of the downstream or down-level gradient property owner to not unfairly harm their property with runoff water. And conversely, a downstream property owner is not allowed to dam up water onto an upstream property. So those are the common type of complaints that our citizens still expect the Grand Traverse County Drain Commissioner to handle, albeit with limited authority. I'm happy to do that as an elected official. I will turn my back on no call that comes into the office to explain and help our citizens understand where they are now to get resolution of these duties. So as I stated, my duties now as Drain Commissioner are mandated by the state. However, some needed stormwater management is not yet mandated in Grand Traverse County until we reach the 100,000 population mark where it will be. The two greatest challenges to municipal stormwater management, as you're well aware of, more for the public's understanding, is funding and the public's acceptance of how to best balance that proper stormwater management. Finally, looking ahead, we'll continue with opportunities to educate the public in low-impact design development, also known as LID. Low-impact design provides a lot of stormwater benefits such as groundwater recharge and recharging of our lakes and streams through that groundwater recharging. It also improves the air quality, reduces thermal pollution, and enhances the appearance of our community, creating a sense of place. We continue to promote low-impact design through Watershed Center and various municipalities. And we want to continue to work with all stakeholders to demonstrate the effectiveness, the bottom line, the financial effectiveness of low-impact development within our local communities. On another note, I'm excited you'll hear about the Governor Snyder's initiative relative to green infrastructure. You could call stormwater piping gray infrastructure, which is very costly to maintain, and so the governor, it's been proven time and again, it's getting a lot more attention. You'll see future initiatives by the governor to promote green infrastructure, just as I'm promoting in this slide, rain gardens, bioretention basins, landscaping, rather than gray infrastructure. Along those lines, we continue to improve, promote opportunities to reduce the impervious surfaces and the impacts it has on our lakes and streams by minimizing underground storm systems, again, the gray infrastructure rather than the green infrastructure that is less costly to maintain, and the high maintenance landscapes. We continue to promote the restoration of infiltration through grassy lawn areas or meadows and weeded areas, as well as deep-rooted plants rather than short-rooted lawn species to promote the infiltration of groundwater, recharging our lake and stream aquifers. All this will result in more creative, functional uses for our land. Before the end of the presentation here, just a reminder, these are the local drain districts we currently have. You'll see 14 are listed, but the final one in Heritage Estates still needs some deficiencies corrected, so that is not an actual drain district yet. There are 13 accepted drainage districts in the county right now. Quick note, for decades, why this has worked and why we haven't been having to do new drains for so long is for decades, the local ordinances have worked to manage the stormwater on each site development. And because they've been doing that on each site development, there are almost 400 drainage conveyance systems within this county relative to recorded maintenance agreements with the Register of Deeds office. Those 400 some developments are like 400 mini drain districts that each XYZ subdivision is responsible for maintaining, rather than using the general fund to create 400 drainage districts. So again, if I make that clear, because we focus on each site development rather than letting the water spill off into adjacent developments, we haven't had to create taxation drainage districts at this time. So again, that concludes my presentation relative to the proposed $18,000 Drain Commissioner budget this year.
Questions?
I just have one.
Chris?
Kevin, you applied for a SAW grant. Have you heard anything back yet on that? Just curious.
Thanks for mentioning that. That's when we talked about revenue and opportunities, I have applied for one. I'm pleased to report that we were, assigned a lottery number. That means that the application was administratively correct. There's 6 times as much demand as what the funding allows currently, but so they've not announced the successful grant recipients yet, but we're very much in the running and did good so far.
Buy a lottery ticket.
The chances are probably better.
Yeah. Questions, other questions?
I guess I only have one. Given that the Board of Commissioners, by kind of a split majority at that point in time, a couple of years ago, decided to split your office, and then you've made your commitment to answer all calls and look into all matters as the County Drain Commissioner. Can you give me an idea how many hours you're dedicating per week to your job, even though we've scaled it down to a salary of $18,000?
Thank you, Commissioner. I mean, I appreciate the question. I'll be honest with you. You know, I used to track the hours, and I kind of got burned doing that, so I haven't been tracking the hours right now for whatever sake. But I can, just off the top of my head, I know depending on this last week during the thaw, the recent extreme thaw that we had, there must have been, with conservatively, maybe 10 calls a day of concerns. Where's this, you know, as I mentioned, the snow load problems, the snow in the lakes and streams, road commission, dry wells. So your question was how many hours? It's still a 40-hour a week job, as well as the other mandatory meetings that are required. But a citizen doesn't understand when he calls the drain commissioner and asks, you know, how do I resolve this? And I'm not going to pass the buck and say, this is not my job, this is the responsibility of the local municipalities. So we're working through this process right now until the citizens, and longer time, it's only been a year, that the citizens might be re-educated and understand to call the local municipality rather than the drain commissioner. As I mentioned that last slide, there's only 14 drain districts. So when I get a call, I can quickly know, is this a drain district function or not? And predominantly every call throughout the day, of the 10 or so calls a day, it's not a drain district function. But nonetheless, here are citizens who have no clue about where to go. So it's a long answer to your question. It's still a 40-hour-a-week job.
So it is then. Thank you.
Just like yours is.
Just like, I was going to say, just like ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're all part-time employees, right?
Yes.
So, other questions from commissioners?
I guess, you know, the one thing that, you know, I at least on my mind and a lot of other people's minds right now is where all this water is going to go when the snow melts. Because, you know, we're downhill, you know. And unfortunately, you know, we've been pretty fortunate for a number of years. We haven't had this kind of snow load. And there's going to be some significant issues in the spring, you know, and it's not necessarily stormwater, it's not necessarily anything, but there's going to be erosion issues, and there's going to be flooding issues that, you know, I remember back, you know, many years ago when I was still sitting in Long Lake Township's board, and a lady come in and she's just livid because her crawl space is flooding, you know. And I had the opportunity to explain to her that 20 years ago I used to hunt ducks where her living room is, you know, but, you know, it's a lot of these areas that have been built on, you know, I think it's going to be real interesting to see what happens along the Boardman River when the spring comes. You know, all of those folks that were all excited because they had flooding on the Boardman River because of the breach at Brown Bridge. I think you're going to see most of those are in the floodplain, and they're going to be wet again in the spring.
Yeah. So, what thaw did we have last week?
2 days.
That was a thaw.
There was 2 days that it got over 32 degrees.
Yeah, well, yeah, that wasn't really a thaw, but it did clean up the roads a little bit. But,
Nothing's thawing out there this morning.
Mr. Chair, that's a great opportunity. I want to address Commissioner Wheelock's comment there because, as the 9 years I've been drain commissioner, it's been a very droughty 9 years. So a lot of people would complain the drain commissioner was lowering the Silver Lake level, but the drain doesn't function that way. It's because it was so droughty. But this last year, we're seeing average rainfalls. Commissioner Thomas helps maintain the Duck Lake Dam lake level boards, and he can attest to we're seeing increased water levels this last year, and I believe it's switching back again, that we're going to see extensive runoff. So addressing Commissioner Wheelock's comment, what are we going to do with all this water? That's why I take each call, and I don't think there should be any turf wars. We should all collaborate with all the municipalities, the road commission, all the stakeholders, the watershed center, the emergency management people. I've got my eyes or ear to the ground, and we could be seeing, ice jams on rivers this year that I haven't experienced in Grand Traverse County in my 35 years here. So, again, there's going to be some concerns. I think we can really collaborate together to figure out how to do this most efficiently without any turf wars or finger pointing that it's not my job.
My question is your budget has increased for this year? It looks like it's gone from, I thought it was 9,000 last year, isn't it, to 18,000?
It's a good point. I can briefly, roughly break that down and would beg for Dean's help if he's got any backup information. I know the budget was listed at $18,000. I believe $2,500 of that may be relative to that defined benefit. My salary is only $7,000 with no benefits per year. There are some per diem charges in there that may be an additional $1,000, and then the rest would be overhead costs for office, phones, computers, et cetera. So there was, I think last year was roughly $15,000, but because of the defined benefit that's being attributed to every department, I had no control over a small jump that happened.
He's answered that correctly.
Good. Okay.
Thank you, Dean.
Other questions? Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time, the opportunity.
Next is other questions and comments from commissioners. Next week, Wednesday's meeting, on the budget meeting, Dave's staff will have before that a synopsis of these budget meetings as to what's happened, and then we can kind of review those, and that from that review, then we can kind of make a decision as to what direction we want to go into. So look for your emails.
What's this wee business? You're going to be gone.
I'll be back.
Oh, you will?
I'm only gone for 4 days. I'm taking a long weekend.
Grief.
I know.
What we're trying to do is put together the, kind of a little bit more elaborate minutes than the clerk takes, that kind of says what we talked about, and when people have asked, well, how much would it cost to contract for snow plowing? And, Danny Brown would go out and get the quote for that, and we'll bring that dollar amount in. There are some things that are going to take a lot of work, and so we're going to actually kind of explore it before we get too deep into it, try and give you, as many numbers as we can get to you in a short time. And then if we need to go and get, full-blown research started, we'll take that direction at the next meeting or the following one. So
Will
that's
that
our
be made
intent
available
for the
to
next meeting.
That made available to the general public on our website before we get it or after?
It's up to you.
It's up to you
We
guys.
can do it either way. I mean, we're going to send it out with the packet.
Okay. Do we want to put it out there on our website before we look at it, or wait until after?
Well, if it's in the packet, everyone will be able to see
It's the packet,
it.
it'll be on the website.
Yeah, it's in the packet. I think before I promoted it to the website, I'd like to validate the information.
Okay, all right.
Well, yeah, we'll get those, the minutes
There's some value
with
to
the
that.
action items in it.
Not
Will be in the
you.
packet. We'll probably be developing numbers all week, though,
Okay,
all the way up to the meeting.
good. When you get it, you review it. If you have some questions before our meeting, be sure and get back to Chris or Dave or Linda or Sarah, and let them know what your concerns are, what you'd like to see differently, if we can tweak it or make any suggestions. It'd be beneficial before the meeting if you did that. But just know that that's going to be on the 5th, and then on the 12th, that's your time when we should be, you're going to be looking at that, digesting it, getting that information, and then making any recommendations that you might want to make. Okay? Public comment? No public, oh, Mr.
On the
Thomas?
12th, I may or may not be here. I'm getting a root canal that day.
No.
Good God.
So,
That's- I stopped to get a appointment for a haircut, and I ended up with one for a root canal.
Chris?
I've had one, you won't be here.
Yeah.
Dave, Sonny called me this afternoon, and he would like to have the subject of citing a new jail on our next public health and safety agenda. So if you would do that, please. And I mention it now
Good idea.
because I have a class tonight. So
Okay, very good. Make
I'm
sure that
passing.
happens.
Good idea.
Okay. Then, if there's no other comments, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
You're in the water tonight?
I've been in the water every night.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to teach flip turns